I don't think so.
Let us know. Welcome to the June 3rd, 2024 meeting of the Yarmouth Board of Health. And just to let everyone know, this is a hybrid participation meeting. So obviously people can attend in person right here in Town Hall, can participate via Zoom, and you go to the website, the town website, and it's got a lot of instructions of how to watch and participate in the meetings. Let's start off with attendance. Eric, are you present?
Present.
Mary?
Present.
I'm Hillard Bosky. I'm present. And Charlie?
Present.
Great. Okay, Larry will not be attending tonight. Okay, let's start right away with public comment, meaning anyone here or anyone at home. If you'd like to address the board, this would be your time. Let me know if there are any hands up there on the screen. Thank you.
I don't see any.
That would have us at number 2 already. Okay.
All right.
So this is a hearing. It looks like a variance request on a septic repair at 49 Tuxet Way. It's in Yarmouth Port. Actually,
Mr. Chairman, number 1.
so it's apparently a request for a variance and reduction in setback. Is essentially it. And someone want to just introduce the case? And I know we have someone here who can go forward. Sure.
Dan Ojala is here to present new construction, and he's going to walk the board through the variance.
Mainly about the soil absorption system.
Yes, good evening, Chairman, members of the board. Dan Ojala, Downkeep Engineering. I'm a civil engineer and land surveyor with Downkeep Engineering in Yarmouthport, and we're helping Cynthia Simon out with a pretty straightforward request. As you can see, she's got a compliant Title V system, 97-ish, installation 98, so that caught the new 95 code. We're putting an addition off the back, and as noted on the plan, would have to have a slab foundation normally, but if you would be so kind as to offer us a variance, it's only going to be a crawl space about 4 feet below grade, and even if it were a full basement, we generally, with the new sealants and so forth, and there's very little chance of the effluent going, 12 feet across a sandy gradient and then somehow getting into that foundation. So, especially with a crawl space, I think it's a very safe variance, but that is a Title V variance, so we brought it in as such, about a notification and so forth. You have my assurance it'll be a nice, safe design. Eric Tolley's the architect, and it's over 12 feet away, and only a crawl space, so no real habitable space inside to, even in the most extreme case, if somehow effluent got in there, it would not impact anyone. So I think it's a safe decision. Any reasonable conditions would be entertained. I'd be glad to answer any questions if you do have them. Thank you.
Okay, I'm sure most of us made a site visit, and people have any questions, comments?
Just as a matter of discussion, the town of Barnstable will often grant these up to 10 feet as like an in-house variance procedure, so it's not uncommon in the area.
Okay, so there's one change, basically it's the sunroom on the property.
Yep.
Sitting behind the garage, correct?
It's coming within 20 feet of that leaching to 12.2, but again, it's not even a full basement. We're only proposing a crawl space, so there'd be even less concern than a full basement. So that's the only variance on the plan.
And are there going to be any changes on the septic system?
None needed. Nope. Single-family home to remain a single-family home. No new bedrooms, so no requirements.
How many bedrooms are on the second floor? We did get an architectural drawing of the second floor.
Yeah, I would have to check but again, let's see the arcs on this. Is there? So it's only a sunroom with a cathedral ceiling, so no chance of any rooms there. We've got a master first floor, so there must be 2 bedrooms up. Probably go up and go right and left. But I don't believe I have that in my file. Does the assessors have it as a 3-bedroom, probably?
Assessors had it at 3, I believe they have it at 3 bedroom.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So we could certainly bring that in as a condition of approval, and if there's any changes, you could hold the variance, but pretty sure it's 2 bedrooms up. Yeah, assessed as 3 bedrooms.
Did you know any of the distances from the existing dwelling to the system now?
It's about, just about 20. I could double check it with a scale if you'd like, but that's how it was set up.
Okay. Okay,
Yeah, it might be 22.
right. Okay. And it looks like there are a lot of neighbors here who've been kind of, I guess, signed off on it or agreed or whatever.
We have the green cards here.
Yeah, there's one house that's right behind it. I just want to make sure that house did respond.
All the abutters have responded.
It? Yeah, great.
And what Dan said earlier, typically this could be an in-house variance, but it does involve some construction, so the board gets a chance, it's appropriate that the board would get a chance to take a look at it and review it.
Yes. You say close, it looks like originally that building was over the line and they cut it off, so that now it's just back of the line, but in the rear there, whatever that big structure is. Very interesting. Back in 1986, it was actually on our property. Either moved or cut back.
Well, what does the board want to do here?
The variance.
I'm sorry?
Grant the variance.
Okay. We can make a motion. So you're making the motion. Anything else needs to be attached to that?
Which time?
We could ask for public comment just in case anybody, but they're probably here for a different matter, I would imagine.
Right. You're not making any change to the septic system. It's really whenever they're building the room there. So you think there should be some kind of time component to it? I'm not sure what that would, does it make any difference?
It never expires.
Okay, so an expiration date, okay.
No, I'm just saying that's fine. Whenever they want to do it.
Okay, so we need a second.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, any other discussion on it? Yeah, it seems pretty straightforward. So, all in favor, just raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
It passes, okay. Have a nice sunroof there, if anyone's here who's
I'm
going to be
sure
living in it.
they'll enjoy some solar rays. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Appreciate your time.
Okay. Nice seeing you. Okay. Okay, next, if you look on the agenda, it's number 3, it's an emergency condemnation hearing, 14 Albion Road, West Yarmouth. It lists the owner as a Nancy Johnson. Just make one statement first, and someone could maybe bring us up to date on it? Okay, thanks. Just to let you know about a hearing procedures and what that means, and I'll just read it to you. It's fairly short. As the hearing, the petitioner and other affected persons shall be given an opportunity to be heard, to present witnesses or documentary evidence, and to show why an order should be modified or withdrawn, or why a residence should not be condemned, vacated, or demolished, or why in an action or failure to act by an inspector or other personnel of the Board of Health should be reconsidered, rescinded, or ordered. So that's what it means by having a hearing procedure on this matter. Okay.
To the board, there's a matter that deserves your, I felt, looking at this last Thursday, deserved your immediate attention. The health and safety, the risk to not only the individual, but to the neighbors as well. It needed your immediate attention. So in a very short time, this came to you. Last Thursday, I was there. I was invited by the police and the building commissioner, the building commissioner had been there on the 17th of May, and you also have his order. Those were structural issues, mostly exterior. At that time, on the 17th, we were unable to get into 14 Albion. However, there was sufficient and suspect evidence that and the building code allows the building commissioner the authority to be able to, with notice, for entry. So on the 30th, last Thursday, myself, 3 police officers, and the building commissioner, and some representatives of the owner, Nancy, you mentioned, Nancy Johnson, her son, Scott Beatty, who's here to represent. We took a tour of that. And I'd like, if we could, I did ask you not to go to that because I think there's a safety risk there. Okay? I did not go alone. But I'd like to just dim the lights, and I'd like to slowly walk you through the pictures so you now have a visual of what we're going to be talking about tonight. So just slowly walk through. There's myself, there's a police officer. You can see in the doorway. This is the kitchen area. Here's more of the kitchen. You can now see the ceiling. There's a water leak that will be explained. The contractor is here, has already pulled a permit for some of the exterior and window work, but then to move in, depending upon your decision tonight. This is more of the condition that we saw. Again, now we're moving to the exterior. Abandoned vehicles, trash. Each of those cars are filled with litter and debris. And more of the same. And that is throughout the whole property. Couldn't capture everything in pictures, but hopefully that gives you a sense of what we're looking at. So you have in front of you an emergency order that I put for this team for an emergency condemnation hearing to discuss both sides as to if, in fact, this meets the threshold for the board to deem this uninhabitable, and it would be condemned. Upon a vote, it would be then condemned as life and safety issues. Now, there is a tenant, although he's not here tonight, there is a tenant that does live there. But from what you can see from the pictures and what I wrote up in this report, there's probably 12 or so critical violations of the state sanitary code. The building commissioner has also issued an order for this. Exterior work, safety issues as well. I'd like to invite Scott Beatty and his representative, or a contractor who's obviously started the work. They're representing the owner, Nancy Johnson, just to explain a little bit of the history of this and what they've been working towards to try to bring this house into compliance. And again, I'd like to describe, this is a duplex. So this is the right side. 12 and 14 is one dwelling, is one house. We're only talking about the right side. Albion is in the shadow of Cape Cod Hospital. It is a dead end, probably about 5 or 6 houses, only on the left-hand side, and this is at the very far end of the street. Maybe Scott, if you want to come up, and the contractor, you want to come up as well? Yeah. Introduce yourself, please.
Thank you for having us on such short notice. There's obviously an immediate resolution that has to
Just
be...
a second, just announce your name just for the record, that's all.
Sorry.
Thanks.
William Planachek, I'm CSL with the state of Massachusetts.
Great, thanks.
I viewed the home with the officials as mentioned, and I was shocked, to tell you the truth, as you are, and you weren't there. You just saw the pictures. I've been working on that dwelling for Nancy for probably the last 10 years. Now, what were the issues that I ran into or had repaired in that 10 years? I did a 3-panel surround shower unit that needed repair. I think I replaced one door and a countertop and a sink. That's in 10 years. So this type of malicious, it has to be malicious behavior, and certainly shouldn't be pointed, the finger be pointed at Nancy Johnson for, not maintaining her buildings, because I maintain her buildings. And again, I was shocked, to tell you the truth, at the conditions, not only of the building, but of the person living there and so forth. It was sad, very sad. So I'd like to turn it over to Scott.
Hi, my name's Scott Beatty. I'm Nancy Johnson's son. The tenant moved in just a little over a year ago. We rented another property to him and wanted to get a bigger place. He had a big truck and some bikes and stuff like that. So I vouched for him to move in there, and he's on housing, public assisted housing. Everything past housing. There was, a couple of issues that, they had a water leak. We had a septic main stack fixed. And then they said there was another leak. He wouldn't give us access to get in there, and that's where you see the roof falling in the kitchen and everything. He would not give us access at all. He kept postponing. He had an annual housing inspection. He kept postponing it to them. They finally got access, and they saw the condition, and obviously it was tenant caused. So all the windows were broken out of the place. He did replace some of them, but it's just pretty much shoveling against the tide. So I don't know what to say about it else.
As to my going in there, I'm not going in there with that tenant in that building. I refuse. And I pulled the permit, as Jay knows, but I will not allow my staff to go into that building with his still being present. So hopefully you can rule on this in a short period of time, whatever's necessary, and we can start to amend the situation, not only for the Nancy and her unit, but also for the neighbors.
Right.
The neighbors, not only the immediate neighbor, but the entire street has to suffer under these
Have
conditions.
there not been complaints?
I don't know, I wouldn't receive the complaints.
Of recent complaints, within the past 2 months. They've been there a year.
That doesn't look like just 2 months' worth of
No,
damage.
that's a year's worth of damage. Everything was fine. I mean, the place was painted and, nice. All the windows were there. I put a couple doors in myself. Upstairs, they're all missing from the frame off. They're gone. The bathroom's pretty much gutted upstairs. So,
And you said that he was a previous tenant in one of your properties?
yeah.
And what happened then? During that time?
There was no damage, without getting personal, there's drugs involved, drug activity, and, yeah, his mother was with him, but she moved out, she couldn't take it, so it was just him and his girlfriend. Misery loves company type thing.
I didn't hear the last thing you said, I'm sorry.
His mother had moved into the premises with him when he moved in, but she moved out because she couldn't take the lifestyle that they were living. And so it was just the tenant and his girlfriend living there, and just bad lifestyle. I don't know what else to say.
I was telling Jay earlier, I was pretty shocked at the condition, but the day before, I had been invited to tour the MCI in Cedar Junction, Walpole, maximum security. I was invited guest, by the way. And I told Jay, I said, I would much rather spend my time in solitary, or cell block 10, as it's called, which was the worst of the worst, than in that unit. Never seen anything like it.
So the board is aware, the fire department is represented here, they're familiar with the tenant, and the police department is also familiar with the tenant. But as stated by Nancy Johnson's representative, son contractor, this is tenant neglect, clearly. And this filth, there's no working bathroom upstairs. The floor has been compromised, unsafe. There's a litany of violations, some health and safety that I have outlined, and the CMR that goes with it, the code that goes with it. There's a lot of work that's going to happen here before, just so you know how, and you probably have had to, not in my time here, but had to condemn properties, and they don't come back online. They can't be reoccupied until they meet the minimum standards for human habitation. So what is before you now is to ask that this property be condemned, and the one caveat is that there is a tenant here. And if in fact, so there's two pieces, if in fact you were to condemn it, and then how long you're going to give the tenant to move out.
Okay, you mentioned someone's here from emergency services, if they would like to come forward, if that's helpful, I don't know.
Well, the fire department, I notified Ken, but it was just letting them know that they knew, I wanted the chief of police, the chief of fire, and the buildings to know that in fact this is moving forward, because this has been a problem. This has been on their radar. Actually, when I met the gentleman that day, two neighbors came up and asked, about this. Can we help you? I hope you're doing something about this. We're in marked cars. You can see it says Health Department. And they were thrilled that, in fact, some effort is being made to direct this. But the way it sets up, and it's odd, it is down the end of the street, so it's easy to look the other way. But once you're there and you see the pictures that are there, it's readily apparent that there's filth and debris, and it's only getting worse until this gets corrected. Thankfully, we have an owner and a contractor who's stepping forward to say, and we want to make those repairs, and we want to bring this back we have a responsible owner here who wants to do that. So this is kind of a unique situation. There's not a combative conversation here in any way.
So who else is here that is going to speak?
I don't know that the fire department needs to come up and speak, or, no, they're representing the chief.
Okay.
Jay, as another caveat, he spoke of the neighbor. That's a single mother, correct, with two children? Mm-hmm. What are the
Correct.
ages of those children, Scotty?
I believe 4 and 3.
So this is the neighbor, this is actually within the same building. This is number 12 Albion. We spoke with them, sound very responsible. But this was now someone up the street who had stopped Mark and I and asked if they could help. And you mentioned, Scott, a little bit, the difficulty of getting in. If you recall, it was pouring rain that day, and we stood outside, and that gentleman still said, although with notice, can you guys come back in a week?
Right.
It was one more piece. This has been contentious and difficult, but it needs immediate attention and correction. And thankfully, we have a responsible owner.
Who's in the duplex, the other side?
So you're looking at, on the other side, we're looking at 14 here, and you're looking at pictures of 14, and that's where the tenant is. On number 12 is a mom and a young child, there. I saw the little children's bikes. I didn't take a picture, but there is a child on the other side. But this did not come, and Mary, it's a great question. It came to our attention about a month and a half. It was, would you say 2 months ago, somewhere in there?
Right, month and a half, 2 months ago, yes, sir.
But it was difficult to get in. This has been, we were there the 17th of May. The building commissioner wrote an order immediately, warranted us to come back in with notice, and we were able to get in, and that's the 30th, and here we are, June 3rd, putting it in front of you.
How was the department notified originally?
I think there was some neighbor complaint that came in, and maybe the police department as well.
Police got called out on a complaint. They had body camera footage that they submitted to the building department, and then also neighbors' complaint came in about people possibly living in the woods because due to the cars and stuff like that look like it. Well,
Yeah. You seeing if you look at that, there's an encampment in the front, right through into the woods there. Hard to see with all the vegetation now, but certainly probably would you say in the winter, you probably can look right through to the woods?
Yeah.
Yeah.
well, how it came about, neither here nor there, you want us to make a decision on condemning it.
We would like that, but it's a great question. How did something fall through the cracks this far? How did we not
I've
see
seen it
this?
happen in Yarmouth before.
Okay,
I saw it one off the Long Pond Drive that the people had ripped the toilet off the floor and were going to the bathroom straight through the hole in the floor in the cellar.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
you're looking for us to condemn this.
So it
To
would
make
be
a
the-
decision, that's our responsibility tonight, to make a decision whether to condemn the place, okay?
And what is our responsibility?
It's decide whether or not the property should be condemned or not. That's up to this board.
Yeah, I would
That's what-
say yes.
So the property and the house. I mean, we don't want all of this stuff around the house to be remaining either.
That is all included in this order. All those would have to be correct before, again, 14 Albion, if the board were to move and vote in the approval of that, it would only be for 14 and not for 12.
Not for
And
12,
it would be,
correct.
it would be the interior and the exterior, and it couldn't be reoccupied until both health and buildings had a satisfactory reinspection.
And,
Yes.
and obviously, Ms. Johnson owns the whole property and the house, the duplex that's there, right?
Well, it's a LLC, but yes.
What's that?
It's an LLC.
Oh, okay, right, yeah.
What's the condition of the wall between the two units?
Uh,
Might as well, between the two units is in good shape. There's holes on his side, of course. Railings are missing and, steps are broken, that type of thing. There is some water damage because the bathrooms are adjoining, as you know, in a duplex. The upstairs bathroom's in terrible shape. Actually, the toilet's ripped right off.
And sink.
Sink, toilet.
Yeah, the sink's
all of it.
gone. The vanity's gone. I don't even know if they're using that toilet.
Yeah.
There was some discussion that they were using the basement at one time, so.
The unit number 12 has not been inspected then recently or last?
Has not been inspected. No, there was no need. So I don't know what the interior looks like of number 12. I can't speak to that.
I inspected the deck on unit number 12, and I'm replacing the rear deck. It's just fatigued. It hasn't been, destroyed or misused at all. It's just old. So while I'm there, I've put that into my building plan application as well.
But the interior has not been inspected. of the property.
She,
Not on number 12, ma'am.
she is also on public housing as well, and she has yearly inspections from the housing, and also we do the Board of Health ones too, and everything. And she's just moved in last year too, so,
And her inspections have been okay?
yes, ma'am.
Has anyone had contact with the tenant?
Not since the 30th,
Been served.
Of May,
yes.
okay. Okay. How does that incorporate in the sense of if we decide to condemn the property and the tenant is
He's been-
not allowed on the property and the building is boarded up, how does that enter the equation when you cannot contact the tenant?
I did contact the tenant. I served notice, and it was gone. I checked, was there again today. The notice is gone. He has been informed of this. With the ability to appear, he has chosen not to. What would happen is, this would be placard. I asked Barry to show you a placard of what would happen. Nancy Johnson or a representative would have to secure the building upon your condemnation order, and entry would not be allowed. It'd have to be, it'd be placard. Now, there is a time frame, I think, I say reasonable, somewhat of a time, but not tonight. It's not going to be placard. Is it 24? Is it 48? At the board's discretion, that the tenant would be notified. You have, I'll say 48 hours to leave the premise, and then the board, it's effective on, I'm picking a date, Wednesday. The 6th is when, or whenever the board decides.
So if that happens, I think it would be helpful for someone to put what hour of the day or something, and not just the day. When is the building to be shut down? That would be helpful to know, for the tenant to know. They're not there by 2 PM, that's,
Whatever the board decides, we can write that up that way.
whoever makes that order, that I think would be a good idea. It would be helpful for the police department to know that.
Okay.
You have make a motion?
You started to, do you want to?
I would condemn the property as soon as possible to protect the other side. Absolutely. If the other side's still livable and the lady and her kids are still, yeah,
Yes.
why jeopardize them longer?
So it would be in order to
I would
condemn the
order-
property.
Order condemn that side of the property.
Number 14 Albion Street.
Yeah.
Okay. And what about a number of hours before the doors are going to be
24.
24 hours?
I'll give 24 hours.
Okay, so that's the motion. Is there a second for that motion? Eric seconds the motion, okay? How are we doing there, okay? Yeah. And any further discussion?
I just asked, the 24 hours starting, that can be served first thing. I'll contact the police. Give me a little time in the morning to write that up. If that, upon service, 24 hours from upon service, is that how that's written up? I mean, that'll go out tomorrow. I just can't say it's going to go out at 9 o'clock or 8 o'clock tomorrow morning.
Right.
Right.
I'd say 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, get in touch with the chief and go that 24 hours to the next 8
I just want to
o'clock
make,
the next morning.
Charlie, thank you. I just want to make the board aware that I have to write this up as a document, like
okay.
the document that you saw, they have rights as well, letting them know that the board has deliberated, there's been a hearing, representatives came, the individual chose not to, and they have 24 hours upon service, when I have that service in place.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, something like that. It's not going to be verbal, I can tell you that. Okay.
So who
Chief has a problem with that.
makes
tell
sure
him
that
come
the
visit
person
me.
leaves? That the tenant leaves?
That will be the police department will be involved. There's a safety issue here. I will not be doing that.
No,
Or someone from the, yeah.
Right, okay. So the police are notified that this has happened, and
Upon your vote, if this were to move forward, they'll
they're
be
prepared
notified.
to eject the person.
They will,
haven't.
they will remove the person, because
She has
it's an order of the Board of Health. If this meets the approval of the board, they're going to be told, the fire department will also be told. I would guess the tenant, you'd probably let the tenant next door know.
Correct.
And that will be placarded and then secured by,
Just so the board, remember, we have a motion, it's been seconded, and now we're having some further discussion. Is the motion clear to you of what to write down? It is, okay. So, any other discussion? If not, let's vote on it.
Just have a
All in
quick
favor?
question.
Yes.
What does that mean regarding, like, as far as his personal property and stuff and everything, when should he be removed? I mean, do we have to wait so long to let him get his property out of there before we can continue?
Great question, thank you.
right.
I don't know the answer to that.
So the board, if the motion were to pass that's in front of them now, they have, that gentleman will have 24 hours to remove his personal items. Once that expires, then that building, it can't be accessed anymore by him or anyone else until, or contractors, upon yourself or your mother's authority.
Okay.
He'll
That
have
was my
20 he'll have 24 hours to remove his things.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I don't think that can be done in 24 hours, frankly.
I don't think he's going to take anything out of that building.
really don't know what
To tell you the truth. I don't see anything salvageable out of that building.
The vehicles, I know, are going to be a difficult thing right off the bat, but they got to go, so.
If you could you just scroll back to some of those internal pictures? I just want to put the board's ease. This is some of what we saw here.
Well, yeah.
We're still in discussion, we haven't voted yet. What else, Mary? Anything else?
It's going to just all be left to the owner.
Right, and if everything's in there, nothing has been pulled out,
Then it's just,
you're asking what happens with it. I don't know. In other words, whatever the belongings of the tenant or tenants.
Yeah, it doesn't become a negotiation. The board is going to, is 24 hours to remove his personal belongings. And that's it. And everything else that's left after 24 hours becomes the responsibility of the owner.
Okay, that's the answer.
I'm sorry, the
Fine, thank
LLC,
you.
right.
Okay, and just to confirm, there aren't any animals in it living?
Not that I saw, I didn't see any evidence of it, I didn't see any, and actually, interesting, didn't see evidence of vermin or roaches and things of that nature. It was filth. You can see this here. I guess maybe I couldn't see enough of the floor to maybe to see droppings. You had to go through that property, and I think you saw it. And nobody wanted to walk in that property.
Been there before.
Been there before, yeah.
Any other discussion? Okay. Let's vote. All in favor of condemning the property as the motion stated, say aye. Aye. Okay. That
Thank you very
passes.
much.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, number 4 here is the cyanobacteria monitoring, and it's listed at the APCC Association to Preserve Cape Cod. That's what's listed on our agenda.
Okay.
If anyone is here for a presentation, just come have a seat and just introduce yourselves. Thank you, both of you, for coming in.
Thanks for having us. I'm Andrew Gottlieb, the Executive Director of APCC, and
I'm Lynn Francis. I'm the Pond and Cyanobacteria Operations Manager. So I can be able to read you the letter that I sent. Demand for APCC monitoring for cyanobacteria is at an all-time high. APCC was able to sample a selected ponds in Yarmouth at APCC's cost for the past prior years since about 2021. 2022.
Excuse me, could you speak up a little?
Oh, yeah, of course. There we go. Is that better?
Yes, thank you.
Perfect. APCC is no longer has the ability to monitor the ponds at no cost, and the frequency of the sampling at Little Sandy Pond and Dennis Pond will decrease from biweekly to monthly sampling between May and August, and APCC will no longer be able to conduct any cyanobacteria monitoring at Flax Pond and Long Pond. APCC has the ability to support limited cyanobacteria monitoring at Dennis, James, and Little Sandy Pond for the 2024 season due to a grant from the Southeast New England Coastal Watershed Restoration Program that is done by the Cape Cod Commission. The Commission provides the funds for APCC to monitor cyanobacteria as part of the Freshwater Initiative. However, APCC is concerned that eliminating monitoring at Flax and Long Pond will leave the public blindsided to harmful cyanobacteria blooms at ponds at their respective public beaches. If the town can fund and execute a limited contract with APCC, we will restore sampling at Flax and Long Pond to monthly monitoring from May to August during the riskiest parts of the sampling season. Additional samples are priced at $110 per sample. The total fund for each pond would be $330, and the overall fund would be $660.
Okay.
so if I might, Mr. Chair, the basic gist of this is we were, we've been able to support and subsidize, more frequent monitoring for Yarmouth over the years. We're a little bit of a victim of our own success in that our demand from other towns has gotten pretty high, so we had to try and scale back. We didn't have the ability to continue to do it at no cost to the town. We found some other means to fund a little bit of it, and we just, before the season got rolling, wanted to have one last opportunity to converse with the town, say for what we think is relatively short money, we'd be able to increase the frequency back up to something that would be a little bit more protective and maintain an ongoing relationship with the town. So that's why we sent the letter to, and it wasn't just, I think we had late season communications with yourselves and one or two other towns just to see whether we could, get as many towns participating as we could.
Mr. Just a historical, a little perspective, how this came in front of you. Mr. Gottlieb sent this into the town administrator. Town administrator wanted to put before the Board of Health to deliberate on this and get some information on that. So that's how it landed in front of you.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. We happen to have a hydrologist, I think, on board these days. I think so, or close to it. Okay. Does this town have its own regulations, or are we just following the state? Are they identical regulations?
So there aren't the regulations. That's one of the things, isn't that, I appreciate that. So that brings me to, one of my questions is, how this aligns with the state DPH regulations? There's always been some concern if, in fact, this aligns with the parameters of state DPH.
It does. So, basically, and Lynn can speak to the details a little bit better than I, but, we've been at this now for 6 or 7 years, and there was some early program tension, frankly, between ourselves and some health agents in some towns because, DPH, Mass DPH has guidelines that they advise communities, basically 8 parts per billion of microcystin or a visible scum. They recommend that the health agent would be warranted in giving a restriction notice to their community. There was early on concern that the way we were handling the information was putting agents who were not necessarily comfortable with implementing the DPH rules in an awkward position. I think we've resolved that over the last several years, and we have a set of procedures where we are simply advising all the parties of what we're finding, and that the recommendation to the health agent comes from Mass DPH for the agent to implement or not implement. And we're not making recommendations, and we're not characterizing the conditions in the pond differently than the health agent would otherwise determine. So I think we've resolved that. Did I characterize
Yes, that's
daily
correct.
stuff correctly?
Yes.
So you report to Mass DPH the results of your monitoring?
So what ends up happening is we do sampling. If we see a presence of either when the sample gets looked at our station, sufficient amount of cyanobacteria that would cause a concern, we will notify the town and DPH and we send a sample, a split sample that's taken at the same time, to Barnstable County Health Department for measurement of the actual toxicity level. That information then goes back to town. If they're above 8, you get a recommendation from DPH. They're applying the guidelines to do a restriction. And if there's a scum line, not all cyanobacteria blooms produce a scum line. Some are mixed in the water column. Some are pushed up against the shoreline, have a scum line. If there's a visible scum, Lynn or her staff will send an image of that to the health agent and to DPH. DPH will typically make a recommendation whether they determine that to be significant or not. If they do, then the ball is in the health agent's court about whether to issue a restriction or not. So we're communicating. We have a set of protocols that have been agreed upon with all the health agents with whom we're working, and we have contractual arrangements for this program in 13 of the 15 towns at the moment. So the information sharing and the process of communicating has been pretty well hammered out, I think, to everybody's satisfaction.
If I could, Mr. Chair, could you explain to the board the vehicle for community messaging? How is anything, their outward message to the community directly? Maybe that would be helpful if we could
So
explain.
there's a couple ways we do it. So we have an online interactive map that's at apcc.org, and every pond that we're monitoring during the active course of the monitoring season has a color associated with it: blue, yellow, or red. Blue is an indicator that no problems. Yellow is an indicator that there's a cause for concern. Either we've seen a bloom, but it's below the level that would cause a recommendation from DPH for a restriction, or we're seeing growth rates that are indicative of things ramping up, it's coming, and you would be wise to keep your eyes open and see conditions that, if they're of concern to you, restrict your own use or restrict the use of your pet or access to your pet. And then red is having been determined to be a issuance of a restriction by the town health agent. So people can look at our map, updates how many times a day now?
Oh, I think it's going at couple, 4 times now?
4 times a day. So it's pretty real time, over the course of the day. As we get results and they get communicated back, the health agent communicates back to us, says, yes, I've issued a restriction. The map would change color within several hours during a weekday. The other way we let people know is people can sign up for an e-blast from us. So anytime there's a change in status of a pond, you would get an email. Now, it's not town-specific. So you're in Yarmouth, you sign up, say, let me know when pond changes condition. You'll find out when my backyard goes green. Or you'll find out when something in Wellfleet. But it's a way that we outwardly communicate to our constituency and people who are concerned what's going on. And I will tell you, it's the most visited, heavily trafficked part of our website during the summer months. People check in on the ponds all the time.
One of the things that, we probably need to pay attention to, and that is visitors here, who may not know anything about your organization,
Right.
or that map exists before showing up. It's something at some point we should be talking about.
It's been a consistent challenge.
Yeah.
The visitor rental market, people are there for a week, 2 weeks.
Right.
They don't, they're not connected to the town, they're not connected to local media. This doesn't solve your concern. Every Friday, Cape Cod Times has made a practice, and they commenced it again this week, to list in the paper or online which ponds on Friday afternoon are indicated to be of concern. Not that everybody reads the Cape Cod Times, but it's, it's another way to get the word out, and then however the town would choose to publicize as well.
What's the time window, for instance, when there's a test results that's of concern? In other words, when the sample is taken, when the sample is done, tested, and the health department learns of that and then acts upon it, I guess. I'm trying to get a sense of this. Is this 24 hours, 48 hours, a week?
Less than that, actually. We actually had some blooms that happened this morning, and we were notifying towns by the afternoon that there were concerns and stuff like that. What usually happens is, through the sampling process, is we collect samples between around 8 o'clock in the morning, and they are brought to the lab, which then we process the samples, and we also look at them under the microscope, and that's when we were able to deem if the scum itself is cyanobacteria or not. And then we take photos, and those photos are then uploaded to our database, which then we take those photos and we send them to the town as well as to the health department within that day.
Can I just ask?
Yeah, sure.
I appreciate that there's now a better alignment with parameters for DPH, and that was, I know that was a real concern in the past. The other one is the notification. Now, what you just laid out, the Board of Health, if we're not looking at that map multiple times a day, we could be starting to get phone calls. Could I ask, is the health department known before? I know it's multiple times. Do we get the notification proactively?
Yes.
Okay.
When I say that it gets updated on multiple times a day, right now I know that with when we have concerns for ponds and stuff like that, we're notifying the towns before, or the health agents before even the public even knows.
And again, not to hide anything. We want full transparency. We just have to be prepared.
Correct.
The
Yeah,
front
that's
staff has
exactly-
to know. Not
yeah,
everything
that's
comes
it.
to my desk. The front staff needs to know that, yes, in fact, we're working with, should you move forward with this, messaging is very important because it can also create concern, panic. What are you doing about it? We need to be able to have that. I don't want to withhold any information from the public.
Oh, of
I just
course
want to
not.
make sure it's accurate and it's timely.
No, one of our process improvements over the last couple of years is to make sure that, the town and DPH see it all first. And there's in no circumstance would a pond get marked red without your action.
Yeah.
So you would tell us
Right.
to mark it red.
And again, please know how I'm saying this to the board and to yourselves, to make sure that we're prepared. And then we want to make sure the messaging creates accurate information. With good information, the community will make good decisions, right?
The other thing we did last year, I think it was last year, is we consolidated our sampling week to Monday through Thursday, so that we would not have situations where we call you or some town agent at 3 o'clock on Friday and say, guess what, you got a problem. And then you have this communication problem that's compounded by the fact that it's the end of the day on a Friday before a weekend. How do you let people know? How do you get it posted? So we've backed everything up. There are occasions where it slips into Friday morning if, we're waiting for toxicity sample result back from the county. More often than not is where that slippage can come from. But the goal is, and the protocol is, everybody knows what they need to know before the close of business on Thursday. So if you happen to get a bad outcome, and you'll know if you decide to proceed with us, you'll have a schedule from Lynn on when your ponds are being sampled. So you'll know you're in the Tuesday cohort, or you're in the whatever day of the week it happens. So there's a cadence associated with the whole thing that makes communication more likely. That the variable is all of a sudden something pops up in between your sampling rounds. We're doing every 2 weeks. You call us, you say, the group pond looks terrible. We get a call from a resident, pond looks terrible. We'll call you.
Right.
If we don't hear from you and say, do you want us to go back out, take a look because something's changed,
Right.
that could bring you off schedule. But we've tried to make this really patterned and understand that while the general public is our client, who the town is equally or more the client in that you need to be able to know what's coming so you can respond. We don't want to have, I saw on the APCC map, my pond is red, and that's the first you're hearing of it.
That's my point, Ms. Copley. We want to make sure we have, the frontline staff especially, are able to, yes, we are aware, and this is what we're doing about this.
You may have heard that happened.
I have heard that.
Yeah, because it did.
Okay.
And it was through no malice, but we've changed the program.
That's good to hear.
Under Lynn's guidance the last year and a half, where we have, pretty consistent policies that were all intended to avoid putting a health agent in an awkward position, being caught not knowing what's going on. So you guys come first, along with DPH, and then we put out information about it. And much like what you were saying, it's not to hide anything from the public. It's just we're talking an hour.
Yep.
2 hours.
That's it. We're
just
able
not to sequence it in a way that puts you at a disadvantage.
Well, the other part too, and just if I can continue with, we would maybe also drop that onto our website. We're interactive, be able to communicate that as well. Messaging is important. We just want to make sure that we're not then chasing it immediately. Once we get those calls, and I agree, it's very interactive. People do watch that information. We just want to make sure we're in that as well. That communication stream and that traffic is including the health department in that. And if you can give us a little bit of time, we're then able to then react and maybe even amplify that communication.
Yeah, you have your own communication channels in your town. Your residents look to you for information first, in many instances, as opposed to us. A lot of our partnering towns just hot-link over to our site.
Okay.
Because we've got a lot of explanatory information. What does this mean? What is the risk? It's a lot of baseline information that might be easier for the town to tie into as opposed to developing and researching on your own. And a lot of towns also link to the map. So if you go to Mashpee, click on Mashpee's site, they're going to have a hot link. It's going to take you to us, and then that's how it flows. They're comfortable with that. Not every town is. That's fine. We can accommodate your interest in having a link, or we can support you in developing something that has language that's more to your liking, however you want to do it.
That sounds great, actually. For the people listening at home or watching, what's the process of actually having a warning put at the site? How does that work? Where someone is going to the shore there and putting a sign up.
We do that. Barry has done that. If Barry, you want to speak to that? Yeah.
Yeah,
They can hear, that's all.
Yeah, if our regular beach sampling done through the county, all 28 beaches, which we'll get into in a little bit, they'll call us and let us know that the records are high, their results are high, we're on an alert. They go back and retest it again. That was going to be a question for you guys. They go back and retest it. If it comes back tested positive again, then we go out immediately and post it no swimming, no do not enter. So once you're in that yellow zone, red zone, when do you wait again till the next Tuesday to go back and test, or do you go back?
It's a weekly testing
Okay, so
at
you
that
don't-
point. It's usually biweekly. We do follow a standard procedure, the CMC QAP, and it does state in there. I do believe it's covered by with the EPA, and it says that it's a biweekly sampling that is to be done with cyanobacteria. And then once we are in that yellow and red, it's weekly. It's actually also written on our. You just had it up. It's on the risk categories. And also in the risk category descriptions, it does just indicate that we go to weekly.
Okay. And once it gets into that yellow, red zone, what brings it out of the danger zone?
So what brings it out of the danger zone for the red category, which is the use restriction warranted, according to the Massachusetts Department of Public Health, their guidelines state that there needs to be 2 consecutive acceptable readings before it can be able to, what's the wording for it, be able to go down to acceptable. And that in the shortest amount of time in which that can happen is within 8 days.
Okay.
So, and part of the rationale behind that is that sometimes, these blooms, you can get some that are really persistent, or you can get some that spike and disappear relatively quickly. The ones that spike and disappear relatively quickly, you can go down one day the pond's green, the next day the pond's crystal clear. Everybody goes, great, right back in. When those cells all die is when they release the toxins. And so the highest toxicity levels can be right after all the bloom clears. And so the DPH guidelines are to have that window of 2 clean tests so that you're not dealing with the residual toxicity in the water. So, like Lynn said, let's say you go red on a Tuesday, come back and sample the following Tuesday, things look much better, you're below numbers, then you have to have a second one, which is a week later. So that, that minimum 8 days. So it depends on how the calendar falls and when the sampling is and when the bloom stretches. Everybody's really eager, especially once things look better, to get the restriction off. But because we're relying on Mass DPH, they call for those 2 consecutive clean samples, and we are deferential to their guidance. You're an independent authority as Board of Health, as health agents. You can decide to lift it sooner if you want. But the guidelines are, as Lynn articulated them, so, it can leave you with an 8-day window.
So the minimum would be water or pond could be closed would be 2 weeks.
Figure 2 weeks.
Yep.
2 weeks. Okay.
If it's in red, but if it's for yellow, usually we go into weekly testing. But in that case, that has a lot more leeway in the sense that is more that if it's just more for potential for concern. So there's no closure that happens during that time. It's just more as a way for the public to know that they maybe should be cautious about going to the water's edge, especially for their children and for their dogs or for their pets. But there's no closure at a yellow. Usually that can be brought down after weekly testing. I've seen it, the next time we go out, there's no visible scum, there's no high toxins. Thus, we are able to recommend that, we can go back to acceptable, and then that's the decision of the town to be able to bring it back down.
One more question, I apologize.
Yeah, of course.
What triggers cyanobacteria? Is it sunlight or rain or?
Combination of things. So it's the freshwater equivalent of the problems we're having in the marine systems. It's too much nutrient load, feeding bacteria or algal species that are naturally occurring in all of our freshwater systems, and a combination of too much food and too much heat give them a competitive advantage and allow them to take over a system on a periodic basis. So you can get baseline loading of nutrients, leaching from septics, sediment load that releases back up into the water column. You can get a bunch of homeowners who had their lawn care people come and fertilize their lawn on Tuesday, and then on Wednesday, before that had a chance to work its way into the plant life, You had a 4-inch rainstorm, and it all washes off into the pond, and then you get a really hot, sunny day, boom, it triggers a bloom. There's a lot of things going on, but the two factors, heat and nutrient load, and then the sort of randomness of heavy precipitation is sort of a factor that we don't fully understand yet, but highly suspect as a contributing factor. And if if it's timed when there's been a lot of fertilizer load around the shore of the pond and you get a sufficient enough rainstorm, you can be unlucky and get a bloom. A lot of our ponds are, about 40% of them fail in our annual metric on water quality. A lot of those driven by cyanoblooms, but about 60% of the ponds we monitor are marginal. So some years they're good, some years they're bad, and it's kind of a little bit of a roll of the dice on whether or not a given year you're going to be okay or you're not going to be okay. Some are predictable as can be. Like what 2 weeks in a 3-week window over the course of the entire summer, pond XYZ is going to go. I happen to live on one. It's right when my sister comes, year in and year out. And other ponds are just predictably lousy from May 1st until October.
And something else to be aware of is that there's been 2 towns that we have monitored for the last couple of years, and they were we had there was no issue. When I say issues, there was no public health advisories at their ponds like that of Orleans. For the first time ever last year, they actually had 2 public advisories at 2 of their very well-known public beaches. In addition to the fact that we are also seeing more blooms that are happening also in Wellfleet. Those ponds used to not have any sort of cyanobacteria blooms. There used to be some of our ones that we could just easily be right off and say, yeah, they're fine. But we're seeing more and more of these ponds getting cyanobacteria blooms. So yes, as you saw probably from our final report, there's not as many blooms that are happening in Yarmouth. However, there is a possibility that these blooms could happen more frequently in your towns as we're seeing in other towns, like in Orleans and Wellfleet.
So what kind of monitoring of the ponds, I know we monitor beaches, but what kind of monitoring of the ponds has Yarmouth Health Department done? And doing?
Actually, right in here. Once a week, we have right now, starting last week till Labor Day, the county supplies Yarmouth with a beach sampler, with a water sampler. They go around to 28 different beaches every Monday, take samples, take them to the lab to get analyzed. And we usually hear back it's quick. If we don't hear back from a Monday by end of work, it's usually by Tuesday of passing. All of our beaches right now, you can see this, I've passed it out. All 28 we have not had an issue with yet, so.
I didn't see it.
It's on top of, it was one of the extra handouts I gave you.
Maybe when we came in, maybe you said it over there.
Maybe it's on the bottom.
Oh,
Very back page of your,
okay.
it's got a little yellow highlight to the top. Here, you take mine.
Phil also has a
I've
report
got
on
it.
top of
Thank
it.
you. Okay.
Yeah, so, and myself and Phil work directly with the beach sampler. It's a summer intern girl, I think that's a girl this year, yeah. They do Yarmouth one day, Dennis, Harwich, so for 5 days, they go test all the beaches and to be consistent, so. And when they fill it out, they have to fill out the form, weather, temperature, sunlight, whether the water was murky, whether it had rack in it, birds in the water, dogs in the water, people in the water, all that stuff that accounts for in the test, so.
Jay, what's our responsibility tonight as a board?
Looking to see if, in fact, the board would like to participate in this program. That recommendation would then be forwarded on to the town administrator, who would be making a decision to participate.
How would that affect you? You all would not have to do it?
No, the sampling will be done, and we'll be working, then we have to establish a communication tree as far as information. We have to become familiar with their website, and then we can message this out to the community.
You would not have to do the sampling.
No.
No, we still do. No, we still do. This is a separate.
This is just Sinovac.
a separate.
It's separate. We're doing bacteria. We're doing, coliform bacteria. This is a different
You're
parameter.
not doing cyanobacter?
They're not doing Cyanovac. At the state is, the town, Barnstable may be looking at that, but this is specifically.
Almost all the cyanobacteria sampling that happens on the Cape happens through us.
Barnstable does, they look at some.
We are Barnstable's agent.
Okay, well, because we get their data as well.
Yes.
Okay.
But we conduct, Barnstable's our largest municipal client.
So the information we're getting it's actually
Is
from.
ours to them.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. But we're not doing that directly.
So do we need to vote on whether to recommend this to the town administrator?
Yes.
That's okay.
Yes, it came through Mr. Gottlieb to him. He asked that the board take a look at this, have a community discussion, present this, hear the information, and then to give a recommendation to him to move forward. And just so I'm familiar, it's $600 is the cost.
Yeah.
660.
Okay,
Okay, that
That's
was
the
my
co-
next question, okay.
So what is the advantage?
Our public will know if the ponds are safe to go into. I have a dog. I walk around some of the private ponds, and my dog likes to go in there and cool off and drink the water. If it looks clean, I wouldn't say anything. But like they said, it's afterwards when the algae dies that the toxins release. I want to know for myself, or the public wants to know, not to let their dogs or children into the
Because
water.
we aren't doing that now. The health department is not doing that now.
No.
So,
Not for cyanobacteria.
No,
okay, all
that's,
right.
we're
So
not, that parameter is not being tested
this
for,
is for cyanobacteria
just only.
Only.
only. Okay. And I assume we should be doing it.
Well, we're not doing that now.
No, but it would be advisable for us to do it.
Yes.
Yes, it would be
Right.
protecting the health of the public more.
Without question.
So than we're doing now.
Yep.
And your dog.
Yep, thank you.
Hints of a motion.
Yes, I move that we recommend to the town administrator that we pursue the contractual relationship with APCC for $650. This is annually.
It's for this year.
Yes, all right.
Talk about next year.
Might go up next year for 2024 cyanobacter testing of the ponds that are not covered by the monies that you said you received to help test the ponds in Yarmouth,
Correct.
correct? So that would be how many ponds?
The two ponds that would be for this particular contract would be two, and that would be Flax Pond and Long Pond, yes.
So that's for 2 ponds.
Correct. And then the other 3 ponds that are currently being covered by the SNEP grant is Little Sandy, where is it? There we go.
Dennis and James.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Okay, any other discussion on that?
Mary, you said 650. And you guys said 660.
Correct.
That's correct,
I'm
yeah.
sorry, 660.
It's all right.
Thank you. Correct.
All right. Any other discussion? If not, let's vote. All in favor of this
Aye.
motion? Say aye, that's unanimous.
Thank you. We're
Thank you.
looking forward to working more closely with the town.
In case you want to take advantage of this venue, you're here, appreciate your coming in, there are people listening. What are the 2 most important things homeowners can be doing to help the issue?
Stop fertilizing your lawn
Okay?
and restore, if you're a pond shore owner, restore native plantings along the shoreline so that you're not washing lawn treatments directly into the pond without the plant life intercepting some of it. So, green lawn gets you a green pond.
And what are some of those plants?
Oh, there's a whole range of native plantings that are appropriate for that riparian habitat. On apcc.org, we have a large section of information on how to, modify your yard care practices in a way that works with as opposed to nature. And you don't have to be a purist. You don't have to do it all. You can pick and choose, start slowly and grow into it. But the best thing people can do is lower the fertilizer load, because most lawns don't need it. So that would be the best thing. And the other thing, you know, and Mr. Lewis picked up on it, you know, the issue with dogs in particular, but also young children, this is a body mass dosing problem. So what might not affect you or me can affect a smaller animal, mammal, whether it's human or a pet. And so, you know, the youngest are the most vulnerable, and pets are most vulnerable even beyond that, not just because your dog wants to take, like mine, a drink of water when they run in the water, but when they leave the water, most dogs will lick and groom themselves, and in doing so, they're removing the cyanobacteria toxins from their fur and ingesting it. So if you do, your dog goes in the water, you have a concern based on what you see or what you've read on a posting, one of the best things you can do to protect your dog's health, get them out of the water quickly, but then rinse them off with a clean hose or a shower just to get the cyanobacteria off them so they don't redose themselves. So there's a lot you can do, and that's why the program is predicated on letting people know what's going on out there. There's a lot you can do to protect the things, the living things you care about from inadvertent or excess exposure.
Thank you for the education.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Anyway, thank you for having us in.
Thank you.
I'll be,
Appreciate it.
I'll be in touch.
I ask him
Great.
about my horse.
Lynn's your point of contact.
Okay, great.
She'll make
Terrific.
it all work.
Looking forward to it. Okay, thanks for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. On short notice, too.
No worries.
Okay. Number 5 on the agenda is the deliberation for the human services contracts for 2025. Packets, we have the list here of, is it 15? What are we, 12, 15?
12.
It's 12 organizations. It's, I mean, it's great we have this money. We have $60,000. It's complicated in deciding how to go about this, I think. The organizations have different missions. Some of them have different sources of money. Some of them are providing more, assistance here in town, perhaps. The applicants have different approaches to filling the paperwork out. You can see that of what they request. Some included other towns and what they're contributing. There, I think there's an issue, of course, different socioeconomic levels in different towns. And if you think about it, if it's 5 board members, 12 applicants, and let's say it's $1,000 increments, for instance, that would be 60 possible amounts. So we're talking probably hundreds of thousands of possibilities of how this board would vote on it. So my feeling tonight, the helpful thing is to get some, how do we determine this, of what to do? In other words, which applicants, or applicant, if it's all going to one, or all of them, and how much it would be. I know, you look at the select board very often, they'll have a subcommittee, whatever. It's one option that's been over the years difficult for us to pull off. Need some rules for it that would narrow this down and make it easier for us to make the decisions. My feeling is it'd be very hard in this venue to start giving the names of different organizations and different amounts of money. I would have trouble doing that publicly. I think if it gets reduced to the number of applicants or who they are or what letter it is on the list or something, and discuss the amounts. If no one wants to, I will come up with an Excel sheet if people would provide the information that we decide tonight. In other words, how do we go about this? Should it be the 5 people are voting on which organizations? How do we determine, is it by number of organizations? Should they be in order of that? How do you determine how much money would be given based upon the numbers that each of you put forward. It was nice if we could kind of put together something, I can put it on paper, get it back to everyone in time, and I would think the next meeting we could really be done with this and determine where this money goes. It's a nice opportunity we have, and it's fabulous. These are all, great missions that these people have. So that's my take on it, is figuring out how to make this easy and for all of us and to get it accomplished. So I don't know what other people have to say.
I think that we need to just say right off that VNA of Cape Cod gets $4,500 because that's a contract for them to provide services for us.
There's actually a separate grant, Christine, am I correct on that? There's actually a separate grant. Maybe you could use the microphone there. Am I correct to say there is a separate, for the communicable disease tracking and the visiting?
There is a separate contract within the town, and that's $6,700.
So the $4,500
Is for your local services.
For local services. So they're in the pool, they're not a designee, like a confirmed, let's say, vendor where you have to immediately, without any discussion, they're guaranteed this. They are guaranteed, I understand what you're saying, the communicable disease tracking, that is being taken care of by the town.
Okay.
So that's an automatic, that's,
Not out of this pool, not out of this pool of money.
Totally
It's $60,000,
Okay.
and the ask amounts to about 90,000, maybe 90 and change, is it 90,000,
Yes.
Christie?
so they may be selected or not selected.
It may not.
Yes, okay.
Everybody's equal in this selection.
Okay, that's helpful for all of us to know. So if someone's taking this on, or I am, you need the rules of exactly, are each of us limited to a certain number of applicants? Could one applicant get $60,000 if someone voted that way? Do we want to do it in increments? In other words, you can determine money based upon $500 or $1,000 or whatever. How are we going to add
I
things
gave
up?
money, I gave money to everybody. And what I did was, the people that asked for the same amount as they did last year, I kept them at that level.
It's called level
Those are the
funding.
two basic starting points for me.
That you gave to something
That
to
I was going to
everyone?
give something to everyone. And then, when looking at how much, I kept if people asked for the same amount as
Right.
they were given last year, I did that. I gave them the amount that they asked for and got last year.
That-
I mean, that's just kind of what and then I went from there in terms of how much people were asking, if it was the first time, for example, Behavioral Health Innovators asked for $10,000, and we've never funded them before.
Right.
I did not give them $10,000, That's what I'm saying. That's kind of how I approached it. Because I feel like they're all worthy. I mean, and I would give more money to some of these folks than we have to give.
Sure.
And sadly, the need is not decreasing, for some of these services, probably for many of these services.
Right.
So it's not like I thought that, for example, the age support group needed less money or the same amount, given the increase in sexually transmitted diseases, which is not now the terminology. Anyway, it's tough. 60,000 doesn't go very far.
Of course not. So, I mean, what do we do with your approach? And
I know.
no, and let's say another board member wants to give $60,000 to one organization, and another board member wants to divide it equally or whatever. How do we? Comes down to, we're going to need to give Jay a number for each organization.
Right,
And it could be
right.
zero, it could be $60,000.
Well, I wrote down what I suggested for each.
Okay,
So
that's-
maybe I could just give it to you, and everybody could give to you what they did, and you could kind of take a look at it and say,
Mary.
see where there's some agreement.
And do you happen to know what the balance is if you?
60,000, yeah.
No, I mean, after you went through the process of designating.
Yeah, 60,000.
Of the previous people?
Of what I'm suggesting, you mean?
Well, 60,000 is the total,
Right.
is the sum. And you said that you went through a process where you looked at previous amounts requested and awarded those previous amounts to those applicants.
If it was the same that they had requested.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm asking, do you know what the balance is if you start with 60 and then subtract?
No. And then how much
It
would be
the money
left?
that we gave last
No.
year.
Yes.
Yeah.
Take that from 60,000, is that what you're asking?
I'm wondering
Yeah.
if you have that,
I
happen to
don't,
have that
no.
figure. Okay,
I had a little piece of paper I did it on, and
Yeah.
it's gone.
okay.
But, no.
Okay, so with Mary's, make a list of the organizations and that she has opted to give a certain amount to each person. Okay, now, we'd have to cross it with everyone else's.
Right.
What do we do if it could add up to one organization comes up to $70,000? We can't do it that way.
Right.
So that's the help one of us needs.
Well, all right, let's decide first. Did anyone feel we should give all 60,000 to one organization?
No,
Okay.
I'm just exaggerating it.
No, I know, but so that's, all right. Did everyone feel like all who requested money should get something?
Something.
Something? Or did you decline some?
Unfortunately, I wasn't here to see the
Okay.
presentations that were given. One thought that I just wanted to share is I just received some grant funding for a project at the high school. And one thing that was unfortunate is I wasn't awarded the original amount that I had applied
Requested.
for.
Right.
And when these organizations are doing their planning and then the amount of the funding gets cut, it sort of, it disrupts
Right.
the process, the
Right.
planning process and the execution process. So speaking only for myself, I had to completely change the scope of the work that I had originally planned.
Right.
And that's maybe something to keep in mind when looking at these requests.
We couldn't afford all of what's
Right.
been requested. I mean, it's.
But I guess the point is it might be better to not give to some organizations than to give a
Has anybody
minuscule
else on this
amount.
board been to any of these organizations and
Yes.
seen them in operation?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. I did the first time around, although not for the three new ones, but the family table I do know about. But the other two, the Bright Lights and the Behavioral Health Innovators, no, I have not visited them. But I did visit all the others.
Okay, I'm just asking,
Yep,
because I have and got a real negative one from one of them,
really?
extremely.
Right.
In fact, if I had my way, I wouldn't give them anything.
So that has to enter into the equation. I mean, that's important. I think the smaller organizations, Eric, would be affected more in the sense of their planning like you experienced. There's some very large organizations that it's not going to make any difference that way.
Right.
Mr. Chairman, if I could,
And that frankly is what happens. I mean, I worked with a lot of grants.
Yeah.
And if you don't get the grant, sometimes you don't have the program at all because you can't afford the person that's going to be administering it and you can't. So, yeah, it would be pretty foolhardy for one of these larger organizations to count on, and like Hill had said, they know to not do that.
Well, I understand that. I guess my point is, I don't think we should just, and again, I'm giving a rash example here, but we shouldn't just divide the $60,000 amongst all participants, obviously.
So you don't think everyone should get something?
Well, I'm not necessarily saying that. I wasn't here to listen to the presentations, but, you know, if somebody requests $3,500, you know, I think it would be sort of irresponsible to say, well, you applied and you requested 3,500, but we can afford to give you 1,200.
You don't want to have to do that.
Well, I'm saying that it may not really serve them well at all. The money may be better served going towards another organization.
Just not give them anything at all.
Right.
I happen to feel the same way, in that their organizations have a lot more options of where their money can come from. Some of the smaller ones, or ones that are just in town, don't have a lot of
Right.
options. They don't have a lot of organizations, people out there raising money. No one usually is writing a very large check to keep them afloat. That's why I kind of agree with you on that.
Mr. Chairman, Christine Slack does the monitoring for each of these grants and has a historical perspective. Christine, did you have something you wanted to explain? You talk to the microphone.
Yes, I just wanted to answer Eric's question. If the board did what Mary suggested and, you know, previous monies, you would have a total of $15,750 left. Out of
Just
the
to clarify,
60,000.
that would be the balance if we were to award repeat applicants with
Same
the
amount.
same amount that they were previously allocated.
If they asked for the same amount.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we just did that for you, so
Thank
that's
you.
your balance.
Okay, that's helpful, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and obviously, I did not give the amount of funding to others that asked for more. And in some cases, I decreased it, so. I think it's a pretty subjective thing.
Question. Money
Unfortunately.
that doesn't get allocated, what happens to that?
It all gets allocated.
Oh, it gets
We're
allocated.
gonna use it.
We're gonna use it. It's only 60,000.
We can distribute it, we're not using it, but yes. Otherwise it disappears into larger budget somewhere.
This is fucked up.
Because we've done 80,000 at least 1 or 2 years. So 60,000 is, you know, it's less than we've had before.
So let's say we have 12 applicants. Now, what happens if everyone gives me a number, for instance, a dollar amount for each of them? So think, what do I do with that? In other words,
See if there's any similarity, anything that's pretty straightforward, and you say, okay, everybody thought that this is what should be done here.
okay,
Do that.
so take it,
See whether there's some agreement.
okay.
So another, I don't know if you had suggested this earlier, but another way to handle it would be to say that there's 5 board members and there's $60,000. What is that, $12,000?
And we each
per-
allocate
per board
12,000?
member. And that would be a pretty simple approach.
This is what I'm looking for. Yeah, no, that's
Responsible
interesting.
for allocating $12,000 to the causes they see fit.
Which
How do you not
means-
overlap? Deserving?
It might overlap.
Yeah.
It would, potentially.
And of course, that means you,
But you know, I suppose you could potentially reevaluate at that point and say, okay, here's what we came up with. We all did this independently. Here's what we came up with. Here's the total for each organization. Now, let's discuss this as a group. Do we think we need to
So in the,
redistribute?
I want
Right.
more than 12,000.
okay, so you're making a motion?
Mine, because I didn't hear the speeches.
You gave that away way too easy.
All right, I'm willing to move on that. We get some futures, though. I want, in 2027, I want bigger numbers, a higher draft choice. I want first round of the draft choices.
Yes, I work for the state police, this sounds like graft and corruption.
Okay, so actually, I kind of like that, Eric. No, I didn't say that. It was your idea, and I like it. And then we can look at it. In your packet, next packet, each of us will have listed the organizations and the amount. And if there's some that overlap, they just get added together, and then we'll vote on it. We can make some corrections or
You
adjustments.
can make changes and then we vote.
Absolutely can.
Something wrong with it. There's something wrong with that idea.
Okay. What comes
I
to mind?
can't, I'm gonna have to think about it. Have to think about it, but, okay, whatever.
Well,
Just put me down for 1,000 for each. Because I haven't given less than 1,000 to any of them. And, you know, the food bank, the food pantry, rather, I mean, that's always been our biggest benefactor, and based on what Susan had to tell us at the meeting, you know, the things that they're doing to keep people in town from being undernourished and
No, would
food
it be all right
starved.
if the $10,000 you got delegated to one person that could give to another person who's already getting 15,000?
What's that? Say that again. I'm sorry, I didn't follow you.
Would it be all right if a certain operation applied for $10,000?
Right.
And instead of giving them the $10,000, I could give that $10,000 to the person, another person who had applied for $15,000 and accepted it, so they get $25,000.
Well, yeah, up to $60,000 for all 12 grant.
Well, I'm just talking about two.
Well, I know, but I'm just saying that
Yeah,
would
okay.
only leave
Yeah.
you,
Oh, yeah.
you know, a much smaller amount for any of the other organizations. But sure, you could, I mean, you could.
You're just asking a
You've got
hypothetical.
$12,000
You're asking a
though.
hypothetical question, right?
Well,
No, actually,
yeah.
it's a real one.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is not hypothetical for me. This is these are
But
real
right
facts.
now, if we go with, you know, with what we're considering, you only have 12,000.
You could put it wherever you want.
You could put it wherever you want,
Yeah, I know.
but you
what
just
I-
12,000, that's it.
Yeah, okay, but I'm talking about removing somebody's 10,000 already.
No, because you only have 12,000.
you can do
There's
anything you
5
want
board
with it.
members, we each get 12,000, 5 times 12 is 60,000. There's only $60,000. That's what we're talking about now. We're not saying that's the way it's gonna be, we're just saying was a suggestion to try to get this done.
So, Larry mentioned it last time, you weren't here, that his highest priority was organizations that were dealing with food. Okay? Just want to remind everyone of that.
I was here, I was online.
What?
I was here
Eric wasn't
online.
here.
Oh, Eric, sorry. Eric.
Another thought I had, and again, I wasn't here, but, so you folks have a better understanding of some of the work that the organizations are doing, but
Do
You
you
could-
have,
you
you
could-
want, do you have all of the
I
things? Okay,
do, yeah,
okay.
I mean, but like, you could categorize their work or their mission
Yeah.
to say, okay, this is food service, this is, I don't know, drug and rehabilitation, this is homelessness, or whatever it might be.
Right.
And look at it from that angle so as to not distribute an
Duplicate.
excessive amount of money in,
One,
or,
for
you
one
know,
purpose.
establish a need based on that. Maybe not contribute to two organizations that are essentially providing the same service.
Say the last thing again.
Well, the purpose of determining their mission would be to avoid distributing funding, duplicate funding, right? Avoid distributing to two organizations that are essentially providing the same service to residents.
Like the food pantry, the Family Table Collaborative, and CC Bright Lights. They're sort of the same mission. It's all food. Let's say it's food. Food.
Okay.
Plus
So you,
hygiene articles for Bright Lights.
so out of your 12,000, you would say, I want to give 8,000 to organizations that are providing food? Is it-
Well, I'm not necessarily making a decision.
No, of course not. Just give me an example.
I'm just, yeah, I mean, well, I think it's important to look at the mission of the agencies and to determine where the dollars are going. And it might be interesting to do that and say, well, in previous years, we've allocated 30,000 of the 60,000 to food-related causes.
Okay.
Is that where the highest need is? I mean, maybe it's making this complicated, but it's a lot of money to distribute, right? So it might be worth looking at the mission of the agencies and determining how that plays into the
Looking at it
decision.
quickly, it's just food that seems to be duplicated,
Right.
except for maybe behavioral health innovators and some of what the AIDS support group is doing. Maybe Independence House. I don't know, maybe Big Brothers Big Sisters.
So there may be 5 or 6 different missions, types
Yes,
of missions.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Capabilities, there's not anyone that I see doing anything like they're doing. I mean, their mission is pretty unique. Same for sight loss services, I mean, that's very specific.
So that would make it difficult, I guess, then, category-wise. Or if there's 6 different categories, then that's what you decide what to do with your $12,000.
If we had a needs assessment,
That's right.
In town?
Like hospitals do, right? A needs assessment, yeah.
how we would direct funding, but we haven't had one of those in some time.
That's the community benefit, right? The hospitals do this on a regular basis. Accredited health departments do this on a regular basis. Right. Every 3 years, typically, you have a needs assessment. Starts with a survey. No, I'm familiar. It's a struggle. They're all worthy. You missed them. They're all worthy organizations. The challenge is in front of you. But this is the grant world, and each of you probably have touched upon this, and they put, I have done this in HHS as commissioner. You put these in, and you understand that sometimes there's a negotiation that happens after the fact, and you don't get, your request is downwardly adjusted. But Eric, you bring up a good point. If it compromises the program to the point where it's no longer viable, that would be something, and maybe we have to have a discussion. Once the board makes their decision on that, they have to have a commitment. Can they still follow through as their narrative said that they were going to do? If it was an oral health program or something like that, and if it's so narrow a funding they're not able to deliver that, then that would go back into the general fund, and the board would have to look at that. I'm just giving that as an example. There are some things
Right.
that, because it can be so narrow, many things, you've all done this in your professional world. There's no shortage of initiatives and priorities, but if you don't have the resources, then you have to pass. When I look at diabetes and all these different things, I use as an example, sometimes, or mental health and things, but we don't have the resources. Not that it's not important. We don't have the resources to deliver on it, to measure it, to communicate it, to make a difference and move the needle on it. Would it be possible if everyone just put their suggestions into the, not to drop this on your desk, Gil, but like Larry has on, and then does that give you a starting point if everyone puts their suggestions in? You have the spreadsheets to say what previously has been allocated, knowing that the starting point is 60, but you do have some new programs that maybe you're not as familiar with, but you can read their packet and their background. And that gives you a starting point. And listen, this is not going to be easy, and it's a mid-management decision. It's not exact science, right? You're going to make the best thinking that you can with imperfect information. That's just how it is. But the other part, too, the flip side, this optimism here, not a lot of departments, I have to tell you, are able to do this.
Right.
$60,000 really says something about Yarmouth. So they're giving back into the community in a significant way. Thank you, town administrator and selectmen. And you're going to make the best decisions you can. And that's kind of how it goes. I think, like what Larry had done, he sent a suggestion into you.
You what, I'm sorry?
He sent a suggestion. He gave his recommendations.
Yeah. His would need some adjustments. It doesn't work.
No, it doesn't.
Perfectly,
I saw
but
that, right.
Yes, I asked him to,
But-
because he knew he wouldn't be here, so he did send it right away to me.
But there's some priorities there. You could see in his suggestions where the priorities are. Yep.
I don't have an answer yet, so I do, that's what I need tonight, is what to do. I'm willing to do the work. I mean, it's not, that much, but I just need the data.
Christian,
Make the graph or the Excel sheet or whatever. You want to go by the rule, the ARC rule, or not? 12,000 or not? Don't, okay, so you want an open amount of how much you give to each of these organizations, okay. Charlie, what do you think? How do you want to do this? Do you just want to pick the amount of money?
There's
and-
some I would fund and there's some I wouldn't.
Right, for sure. So you'd be okay of sending me a list of the organizations you want to give money to and the amount that you suggest we give?
I can do that.
Okay. I'm okay with that. I mean,
Yeah.
Okay.
so,
We'll just have to sort of find a way to,
yeah, it's not going to be that clean. It's going to be a little bit more work next time. So
Way, yeah.
certainly you can see that not just the amount that some is being suggested by the 5 people, perhaps the number of people on the board want to give money to that organization.
Yeah.
So that would be 2 pieces of information for each organization. How many of us want to give to them,
Yep.
and what the total amount is. And we'll have to figure out what to do with that at our next meeting. Hopefully, we'll finish this at our next meeting.
When does this have to be completed?
The sooner the better. These contracts start July 1st. And I need to get them through the town administrator signed and, so that they can start invoicing. But that is when these contracts do begin. It's July 1st of the year. It's a fiscal year for the contracts. So, just so you're aware, by the end of,
Well, we have a meeting on June 17th would be the next meeting.
What's that?
June 17th would be the third Monday.
June 17th.
we're already in June.
Right, no, I'm looking at you, is that,
Am I right on that, June?
you do that, 17th, yeah.
Yeah.
That, you can do that?
Can I do what?
You get the information on the 17th,
Absolutely.
Sure.
and it'll be before 7 PM on the 17th?
Absolutely.
We have time to do that.
But we'll get it, yeah.
That's
not
what
a
we're
problem.
going to aim for.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Eric, why don't you send me an email, and you can do the same, or just drop it off, or send a note. Just drop something off in the office there and send it to me, okay?
pigeon.
We're going to get into poultry in a minute, Eric.
Okay, let's move along, good. Fine. Number 6, we're up to poultry regulations here. Let's do this. This should be pretty straightforward. I'm sure you all read it again.
What's the issue?
So
Well-
the issue is we missed one of the poultry items. Completely didn't think about it. Larry didn't think about it. We didn't think about it. Is guinea hens. It was brought to our attention that guinea hens are very loud, very boisterous, very protective of their properties. When approached by any kind of what they feel is a predator or prey, they're extremely loud and they're much of a nuisance like a rooster. We would like to be able to add under the restrictions, no roosters are permitted on license. We'd like to, no roosters and guinea hens are permitted.
Okay, what page and what paragraph?
Page
here?
1 of 5,
Okay,
1, 2, 3 paragraphs down under restrictions.
okay.
If we could just add and guinea hens after roosters.
So under restrictions, there are 2 paragraphs there, and then there's a list.
Restriction, well, that very first sentence.
Where it says no roosters are permitted?
Yes,
Okay,
no roosters and or guinea hens
okay,
would be my suggestion for the board.
okay, I'm okay with that. Everyone else?
Yes.
Okay, what else?
That's it.
Carl, you're okay with that?
How come no roosters? You have to have one once in a while.
Well, people can apply for a variance, if I'm not mistaken, and we did pass one, right?
Rachel.
Very recently, and that was a fairly easy one based upon the location of the house. So someone can. It's not a guarantee that you're on a busy street that you are going to be able to get a rooster.
You just said no roosters, so I'm trying to figure out what's going on here.
Once again, the regulation says that, however, there's a regulation, but you can apply for a variance that you want an okay to be able to have a rooster.
It's already been passed, it was passed when we redid the regulations
Yeah.
April 1st, this was done.
for the
Yeah.
poultry.
So someone certainly can, but they have to apply for it, and it would be a decision upon this board. That's all. As we had done. I mean, hopefully we're signing this tonight.
Yes,
and
we
if
have
there-
everything ready for you.
And if there's some edits, the signing is on a separate page, so you can make an edit. And, I mean, we do things pretty loosely here that way, which works out fine. I had a question about transferring. If you look at page 1, under fee, the last thing says a license is non-transferable. On page 3, under renewal of license, the second to last line, it says transfers. I'm not sure I understood how that was written, whether, if you look at it, let me know. Under renewal of license, it's transfers here as an example. Does that contradict that transfer of license is not allowed? I don't know by reading it.
Guys, where are you?
Say it
Okay,
again.
so if you look at page 1, absolute last sentence says the license is non-transferable under fees.
Yep.
If you go to page 3, under renewal of license, it's sort of one paragraph, I guess.
It just transfers.
The way it's written to me, is it saying that transferring your license is an option?
Right, it does, yeah.
I read that as the transfer applying to the facility. So,
Or, but it says or.
or,
Changes the location of the facility, or sells, assigns, transfers, or otherwise disposes
of such
such
facilities.
facilities.
Right, so I don't think you have that option as for transferring it, I mean, like you do for other things.
Oh, it's talking about facilities, like Eric said. Not licenses.
Okay, yeah, okay.
It
Thanks.
says, or otherwise disposes of such facilities.
So I don't think it's talking about transferring the license. I think
Yeah.
it's talking
Okay,
about
this wasn't clear to
transferring
me,
the
fine,
facility.
I have a question mark next to it, that's all. Okay.
So when you sell a property, you transfer, it, that permit doesn't go with it.
Right, right.
You're not in there, you didn't buy the home.
license
and
doesn't
the permit.
transfer.
Exactly.
You have to reapply.
You have to, exactly
Right.
right. It has to be put into your name.
Right.
The other one's a minor edit, and see what you think on that. If you look on page 2, under the second area where it says construction of poultry building, and the second to last line lists, in other words, enough to prevent wild bird, vermin, or predator intrusion. And then the last sentence says it should not be constructed so as to prevent predation. Do we need to repeat it there? I mean, is it just redundant or not? The last sentence, do we need it there? Or is it saying the same thing or not? Maybe I'm not being clear. Is the last sentence necessary, or is there already the points being made?
It shall be.
It's redundant.
Yeah.
It is.
That last sentence doesn't
okay.
need to be on there.
We just delete the last sentence? It seems pretty straightforward,
Since you've
fine.
already stated it in the earlier sentence.
Okay, I only had one other really minor one on page 2, under storage of feed. It says all feed shall be stored in metal of heavy plastic containers. It should be the word or. Do metal or plastic, I mean, that's minor, but. Anyone else have any edits before we move along and sign this?
What was the last one?
I'm sorry, a little too fast, I'm sorry. It's page 2, go down to storage of feed. The first sentence, and it says stored in metal of heavy plastic containers. We're just going to change of to or. That's
Okay,
all.
so to sign this, at the top of the page, it has your April 1st date, would have to put this date. So if I could, at the next meeting, put the date of today's on there.
Yep.
Right, of the June 3rd. So these edits, to include the edits that you just gave, and you could sign it on the 17th.
I'm
June next
okay
meeting.
doing it that way, for sure,
Okay.
yeah? All right.
All right?
So do we need to make a motion?
I guess we should,
You
yeah.
really need to vote those edits.
That's what we're doing.
Move that we revise the regulations governing poultry dated April 1st, 2024 with the 3 changes noted.
Thank you for counting them.
Second.
That's what you hear, Mary.
Obsessive.
Well, we'll talk about that later. But how about a second to the motion?
Second.
Oh, great. Any other discussion? Hopefully not. Good. All right, all in favor, just say aye. Aye. Okay, we can
Aye.
move along. Barry, you're okay with it?
Yeah, I'm fine. Thank you very
You
much.
did all the work, so thank you. Okay, we're going on to hoarding task force. So, Jay?
It's an issue that Barry and I both are dealing with on a fairly regular basis, too often, actually. Unfortunately, the task force representative was unable to attend tonight, so we're just going to defer that to the next meeting. But we'd like to talk a little bit ahead and understand that there is a task force, community members, faith-based organizations and beyond. You heard some of them from the human service grants, they talked about this. So that to be determined, to be talked about at another meeting. Unfortunately, she thought she could come, but she wasn't able to. So
Okay.
next meeting.
Okay. That's good.
Number 8, it's an update on hotels/beaches/pools.
Yeah, so Health Inspector Phil put a very nice report together just of what we have. Semi-public pools and whirlpools, we have 111 pools and whirlpools. 81 of them have been inspected, actually 82, because we did one this morning, have been inspected, so that leaves us 29 so far. Motels, inns, and lodges, 56 licenses, 44 have been inspected. He goes out with the building to do those. Beachwater 24 sampling, which we talked about a little bit before, started last week for all 29 beaches. No issues with any of those. We have 4 recreational camps in town. Once those get closer to end of school, they will do the inspections on those. Food establishments, 150 licensed food establishments inspected, 13 remain seasonals. Those are like the Cape Cod Baseball League concession, the DY concession, the schools, stuff like that. So that's why they haven't been inspected yet. But he's on top of everything else. And retail food establishment, there's 41 licenses, and he's conducted 47 inspections already. He's already gotten back to a couple of them already. So
we know that they can't, a pool can't be opened until it's been inspected.
correct. Some of them are like condo associations that it's not warm enough yet. They don't have heaters in their pool, so they don't open until they get warmer. So I asked Phil about that.
Okay. And in terms of motels, inns, lodges, 12 that have not been inspected are not open, correct?
Pretty sure, yes. And he works directly with the building department for their COIs. So.
Yeah, if they were, they'd be in front of us.
Yeah.
If they did that.
Oh, but, yeah, you had
Right.
just asked
I
for
assume
this.
there are no changes in regulations. There were a couple of years ago, we worked on, there was a change about the steps and pools.
We're
That doesn't
behind the
happen.
times on those.
What's happening to the water park? I mean, that brings a lot of business here, a lot of visitors. Was that on here? Was that inspected? Do we know?
They're not open yet. They're not opening until another couple of weeks, correct, Jay? And
Okay.
then before they do, they'll have I know Phil go out. I told Phil I'd like to go out also. I know Jay's been out there already talking to him. So they got some new equipment, which is very nice, which is going to bring a lot of revenue to the town, which is going to be good.
A little
So-
complicated setup there, so that's the reason.
Yeah, so we will definitely up our health game on that, just to make sure they're up to par. We're going to stay on top of it.
Where are we with lifeguards at the beaches now?
Pardon?
Where are we with lifeguards at the beaches?
I am not for sure with lifeguards. I was out there this weekend at Gray's, and there was 3 of them there. So, I know my wife and my daughter have been to other beaches, and they said on the weekends right now they have lifeguards. I don't think probably during the week they're not charging and monitored yet, just except on weekends. And once schools get out, that's usually when they're fully 7 days a week are monitored and lifeguarded.
I can just say, unfortunately, drownings are up with kids. And one of the theories based upon that was during the pandemic, or the height of the pandemic, there were fewer places open to swim. Kids were getting fewer swimming lessons, and that's one reason why there may be more drownings. There was a child pulled out of the pond in Falmouth on Sunday. CPR was administered by a bystander on the beach there, and the child was flown to a hospital, off Cape, I believe. So that's sort of an unfortunate incident, and because drownings have been going down for a lot of years before. So if there's nothing else on that, any new or old business?
Just let the board know that you'll note that this is the first meeting or agenda that you haven't had a migrant or a COVID update in quite some time. And we'll put those back. COVID, if seasonal influenza, when the season is right, but the numbers are too low right now, as you said at the last meeting. But besides that, no, we're all set.
Well, on a different front with viruses, I mean, we know, or we're beginning to hear a little bit more about the H5 avian flu. There's been a third human case, apparently, in the country. This all comes from cattle. These are all people working with milk products. And the third one has respiratory symptoms. The others had conjunctivitis only, which is sort of a little infection in your eyes. This person had some chest discomfort. I don't know how sick the person was, but it's the third case. So we'll see what happens. I mean, the potential is there for it to increase the problem. And whether it will become transferable from person to person, we don't know that.
Stay tuned.
Yeah. Anything else, anyone? I know we have a meeting on the 17th. We established that.
That'd be the third, if the board is available,
Yep.
17th,
Yep.
17th of June.
Anything else?
Nope.
Okay, so everyone get me that information.
Miss Monique Daly, is she our new secretary here? I hadn't met her. I'm sorry. Welcome.
It's at the last meeting, I apologize.
Did she?
Yeah,
I'm
this is the
sorry.
second go
I
at it.
tuned in, and so,
I'm sorry, Mary, okay, that's right, too, okay. Apologize, yes.
As
Monique is-
as I mentioned to you, it looks like you decided to come back, at least for another visit. This is just a site visit, everyone.
they're not usually this long.
No.
No, this was a long one.
And we just need one more motion, please, somebody.
Make a motion to get out of Dodge?
Second,
Okay, any discussion? No, good. Okay, all in favor?
aye.
Okay.